Ever since my review of the custom DualSense from HYPR 168 days ago, the comment section's been pretty hyper, wondering if the Xbox variant is as good around the back side of the haunches with those back flaps, those rear buttons. I'm proud to say the rear button design is virtually identical, in fact actually a little bit more comfortable ergonomically because it's on an Xbox controller, which has, in my opinion, a little bit better shell design than the DualSense. You're getting long-winded in the intro, don't do that. We're going to review this gamepad on a multitude of categories and find out if it's the right controller for you. Let's get it.
This is your controller captain. We've reached 6,900 feet. Go ahead and start flicking the sticks and mollywopping the back paddles.
You don't like back paddles? How about those rear buttons?
We've tested almost 100 custom and premium controllers, and we're only at the beginning. You need a thumbstick guide or a tutorial on how to overclock your controller?
Check out the controller playlist.
Bing bong.
Controller captain out.
A quick disclaimer for my audience, the Stallions and Stallionettes, this controller was sent for review, but this is going to be an honest, comprehensive review. I haven't been paid or told to say anything about it, so if there's any cons, shortcomings, or areas of improvement, you're going to hear about it. So these companies make better products over time. Another quick but important note, throughout the video I'll refer to this controller as the Recon. That's even the title of the video, because at its core that's exactly what this controller is. But you might be wondering, Kevin, there's some orange parts or components on there. I did go through the builder just to add a couple of cosmetic tweaks. However, at its core, this is the Recon. All of the parts, components, performance is identical to that cheaper pre-built version called the Recon, which I do recommend. But if you wanted to spec out a custom controller, there is also a tour of the builder later in this video. As for the packaging, included accessories on HYPR's Recon controller for Xbox. The packaging, the box itself, is identical to the PlayStation 5 DualSense controller that I reviewed, as they're going with kind of this burnt or caution orange, very similar to Scuff's theme color. Nice gloss gray HYPR logo stamped in the middle, and it is actually raised a little bit as well. Little gray pull tab in the front, which is magnetized. It will open up your box and tell you, welcome to performance. You are going to have two included AA batteries because it's an Xbox controller. Now you have the option of getting a rechargeable pack, a little dock, cradle if you will, but you can always take the disposable route. Laser cut foam in here with a nice little cutout to get your controller out. I love to see that. I did struggle during my review of the Victrix BFG to get the accessories out of the box without actually damaging some of them. Not an issue here. In this little Ziploc bag, you are going to have 4 extra caps for the rear buttons, which is very nice to have. They are identical to the ones that are pre-installed, so it's not like a different surface area, kind of how Battle Beaver has their smooth ones and then their beaver tails. These are just plastic slick ones, but you do have 4 replacements in case these pop off and gets lost, sucked up in the vacuum, or something crazy. Is there an instruction manual? No, not a physical one, but you're going to have a little placard with a QR code. You scan that and it takes you directly to how to rebind the rear buttons. Not my favorite delivery of an instruction manual to not have a physical card explaining some of the key features, but I do like that the QR code took me directly to how to rebind these rear buttons, considering that's all I really needed from the instruction manual. Everything else I'll figure out on my own. And you're watching a GamerHeaven review, so there's no need for you to even diddle with that instruction manual. We're going to cover it all. Notice for cosmetics or appearance, little schmutz on there we go. This is a very handsome controller. Keep in mind, if you get the Recon variant, it is going to come completely blacked out, which I think looks fantastic. I did opt for a couple of cosmetic tweaks, going with this black and orange theme, which I think looks fantastic. Some might call it a Halloween theme, whatever the hell you want to call it. I just think it looks damn good. But the standard Recon controller in all black looks fantastic, and of course, if you want to dive into their builder, they do have a ton of options. We will be touring their builder part by part, component by component, later in this video. Dimensions are identical to an Xbox Series controller, which is a fantastic thing for comfort. Also, these rubberized grips, they're a little bit harder than what I'd like, but they do feel good. The weight of this controller in ready-to-run fashion with 2 AA's installed is popping up on screen here, but this is a very comfortable controller because you have that Xbox layout of the offset sticks, you have this very nice, comfortable, ergonomic shell design, you have these rubberized grips, which again aren't the most soft, supple thing in the world, but they do feel good. Better than just having slick plastic on the front and back of your controller. And finishing out comfort is going to be the rear end or tuchus, where you have those 4 rear buttons, which are damn near flush with the rear shell. They stick out a little bit, they have little stems or shafts, and then a flat section where you make contact, but they're pretty comfortable. Pretty noisy too. Talk about that later. I'm going to give ergonomics and comfort an 8 out of 10. Repeat, an 8 out of 10. Falling in line with my review of HYPR's PS5 DualSense controller, I have no issues with build quality. Where the front faceplate and rear shell meet, there's no huge panel gaps, and these side panels that are only on Xbox controllers, well, these are in place good too. No crazy panel gap here, there's no gouges in these rubberized grips, and everything that makes contact with your hand feels as it should. I'm going to give build quality 7 out of 10. Repeat, 7 out of 10. Over here on a fun little page called Warranty and Repair, actually probably not a fun page if you ever actually need to activate the warranty, because that means that something's going wrong on your controller. But if it does, does, here's what you can do about it. This is an interesting page, and we have some fine print. Well, actually, it's all the same font, but let's look at some things. You have a 7-day replacement warranty, which is mainly for if you got the wrong component on your controller. You ordered blue bumpers and you got pink ones. You can send it back. They will repair that. They will fix it. Or if something comes clearly busted to hell right out of the box, you have 7 days. In addition, you do have 1 year on the following parts or components: quick bumpers and quick triggers, which are those mechanical clicky bits, and the mechanical rear buttons. Now, this was a change that was recently made, and a very positive one that I wanted to bring to your attention. Stick drift is now covered for a year as well. And that warranty does not cover the following line items: normal wear and tear, so the brake pads and tires, you know, that's not covered by the manufacturer. That's just gonna happen. Blunt force, duking it out with your controller, perhaps stop. Fall damage, you take fall damage in game, your controller takes fall damage off your desk. Don't do it. Liquid or fire damage, you want to go swimming with your controller? Don't. And your gameplay's hot, but the controller should not be on fire. I could go on with some little witty quips for the rest of these, but just don't do any of this stuff here because it's not covered. As for the D-pad or direction buttons, not much to report here, as it is identical to a standard Xbox Series controller. Yes, you can cosmetically tweak the color of it, but it's still going to be that hybrid D-pad wheel. And as mentioned during my comparison of stock Xbox controllers and stock PlayStation controllers, I actually like this quite a bit. 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10. Following along with that trend, the face or action buttons are identical to Xbox Series buttons. Other than that orange cosmetic tweak, these are just typical membrane buttons. They have a rubber plunger mechanism underneath this front faceplate, which could get these buttons jammed in over time. That's pretty common on Xbox controllers. Hopefully that's not the issue here. Definitely not a fan of how rounded Xbox buttons are. I mentioned that during my comparison video. Also, quite a bit of side-to-side play here. That's not exclusive to HYPR, just Xbox controllers, but they're serviceable and they'll get you to gaming. Guess what? You probably won't be using these face or action buttons much because you can flip it around to the dark side of the moon and bind those face buttons to the road less traveled back here with these back buttons. And as for the accessory button suite, that's going to be the HYPR button, which would be the Xbox home button and still functions as it. Got your pause, options, and share buttons, 3.5mm jack, and the accessory port that hardly anybody uses unless you're one of those texters that likes to snap on that QWERTY keyboard on the bottom. You get to ripping and dipping some text. I'm not a huge fan of these. The plastics that HYPR went with on the share button suite, as well as the triggers, just doesn't feel the best. Also doesn't look the best. It's simply cheap plastic, you can tell. And unfortunately, the orange doesn't really match up with the orange of the face buttons, which clashes a little bit. And I really don't like custom colored buttons that don't have the labeling etched on there of what the actual button is. Yes, I know that this is pause and this is the share button, but it's great to have that actually stamped or etched on there. A lot of times with custom controllers, even the face buttons will be all one solid color. And even though you know, yep, that's A, that's Y, it's still classy to have that OEM factory print on there. Don't have that with the share button suite here. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10, a 6 out of 10. As for the thumbsticks, analog sticks, joysticks, or front niblets, I'm actually a fan of these. Although they are not removable, it kind of threw me for a loop. It's been a long time since I've grabbed a Pro controller and not been able to pop off the sticks. Swappable thumbstick caps is almost a staple of a Pro controller. Generally, the trifecta is going to be remappable rear buttons or back paddles, a trigger stop or lock system, and then swappable thumbstick caps. Those are the 3 features that damn near every Pro controller has. Not this one here, but you do have options on their builder. I did opt for the Stone sticks in this orange coloration, and I'm a big fan. They're very grippy and feel great on the fingertips. I wish they were a little bit taller, but that's where KontrolFreeks come into play. And compatibility, we'll get into that now. These are white Galaxies for PlayStation 4 and 5, and they are not gonna go on there. Too taut. These are Red Infernos for Nintendo Switch Pro controllers. Ooh, too tight as well. And these are Omnis for Xbox One and Series controllers, and those are the smallest in millimeters, actually the smallest KontrolFreeks, so they definitely aren't gonna work. So no out-of-the-box KontrolFreek compatibility with HYPR's Dome sticks. But are you screwed? Absolutely not, because you can get yourself some universal slipovers like these ones from Play Vital. These will be linked in the description below. Also, I am a KontrolFreeks partner, so if you do want to pick up some caps for a controller that does have compatibility, make sure you use code Stallion at checkout to mollywop a good percentage of your purchase to the Shadow Realm. Over here in the sleazy back alley that is Gamepad Tester, where we like to hang out after we've gotten our tetanus shots up to date, what I'm looking at is the horizontal and vertical axis of these thumbsticks. Is there any out-of-the-box stick drift? No, there is not. Not only was there none in gameplay, but it's also not reflected here in Gamepad Tester. Yes, it's not a perfect resting value, snapping back to 0.002, but there's certainly no out-of-the-box stick drift here. Let's get the accuracy by running a circularity test. Let's go slow and steady counterclockwise to begin with. Exactly what we've come to expect from potentiometer thumbstick modules. They're touted touted all over landing pages and product listings across the country as being freakishly accurate. What the manufacturers mean by freakishly accurate: an average error rate of 12 to 14. Keep in mind here, lower number better, and also this color red we really don't like to see. Pink is okay, you can have a good time with that, but purple is generally what we like to see. A purple or a very happy plum blue. What this means is certain areas your movements might not properly be registered, but luckily I can report in gameplay that wasn't the case. And to finish out the thumbstick section with a grade, because everyone likes a number so they can compare it to other controller reviews I've done, or just tell their buddy, hey, GamerHeaven just slapped sideways that controller and gave it a measly 6 on the bumpers or whatever. Where was I going with this? This controller actually does have anti-friction rings around the outside of the thumbstick gate, so you're going to glide along that smooth plastic rather than that rough plastic front shell. This is a standard feature on the Sony DualSense controller, however, you gotta pay for such a thing on the Xbox side of the house, and it's only some Pro controllers that have anti-friction rings, so we get excited when we see them, and this has them. I'm gonna give the thumbsticks on this controller a 7.5 out of 10, repeat, a 7.5 out of 10. Actually, make that a 7 flat, remove that 0.5, because you know what can't be removed? These thumbstick caps. They're not swappable or interchangeable, which is simply insane on a Pro controller. And KontrolFreeks don't have compatibility with their domed version. The bumpers, I shan't not waste any time here because they are stock standard Xbox Series bumpers, and yeah, moving on from it. The triggers don't have any kind of an on-off trigger lock or stop system. They are permanently going to be a digital mechanical switch to give you a mouse click. I have tested a smorgasbord of Pro controllers from different manufacturers, different companies, using a similar mechanism, and I would have to say these are pretty damn good. They're much quieter than a lot of the competition. There's a gnat flying around in here. Sir, did you buy a ticket to the GamerHeaven? I don't think you did. You're gonna have to fuck right off because I'm in the middle of a review. Can't stop, won't stop. Rockefeller Records, baby. We get down.
Can't stop, won't stop. Rockefeller Records, 'cause we get down, baby. We get down, baby. Girls, they love us.
These triggers do feel very good. They're relatively silent, and even though the plastics do feel cheap, I mentioned that during the accessory button suite, as it is the exact same plastics on the triggers, it actually does feel kind of good on the fingertip. These strike a good balance between resistance, you're not going to accidentally actuate them, but they're also very light. I would say they err more on the side of light, as you can actuate them very easily with the side of your finger or the tip of your index finger. These are pretty damn sweet. The only thing that would be better is if you could turn them on and off, so you could use this controller for racing games to modulate the throttle and brake. These are always going to be that minimal squeeze, but that tiny squeeze does feel good, and if you're buying this controller strictly for shooters, third-person action adventures, games that you want that short pull, this is going to do it for you, and do it for you good. 7 out of 10 all day. As for the rear buttons or back paddles, luckily in this case we are talking about rear buttons. Paddles are great when you're out to sea, however, if you're on dry land, I do prefer buttons. Quicker to actuate, less of a chance to break because there's not plastic bits hanging off the back waiting to snap. If you have metal paddles like the Elite Series 2, that's much less of an issue. Not really an issue. But I want to talk about what I like about these buttons than the few things that I don't like about them. Pretty much just two. First, I'm going to go brush my teeth because this is a real close-up angle. You're seeing everything. Let me brush the grill real quick. The most important factor with these rear buttons, are they comfortable and can you cover all 4 of them simultaneously? And the answer to both of those is going to be yes. They are sunken almost fully flush with the rear shell, and they do have 2 options for placement. One, if you want to be able to cover all 4 of the rear buttons with just your 2 middle fingers, and another variant if you want 1 finger per 1 button. This is the 4 fingers for 4 button placement, and I am a fan. Right where my ring fingers are, I can use the meat, this little ball right here, to press the bottom 2, and the same place on my middle fingers will sit right over the top 2. It's almost identical to their design on the PS5 DualSense, except I think it's even a little bit more comfortable on this Xbox controller just because of the shape or shell design, which I've always been a fan of. 2 aspects I am simply not a fan of with these rear buttons, and the first one is going to be they're pretty darn loud. Not the loudest that I've tested, but definitely up there. Pretty darn noisy, so if you're playing right next to a spouse that's asleep or something, good lord, they're pretty noisy. The last thing I don't like is the process to remap or rebind the rear buttons. I do like that you can do it on the fly. You don't need a piece of software on a PC that you might not even own because you're a casual console player. You don't need to install a stupid phone application, the Razer over there, to do any of your tweaks. No, it can be done on board the controller, but it takes a little bit of time. Now, if you're somebody that's going to set 1 key binding and then just keep that mapping for the entirety of the controller, this really isn't a big deal for you. But if you share this controller with somebody else, or you do a different button binding for every game, you're going to be entering and exiting remapping mode a lot, and it is a lengthy process. To enter remapping mode, hold down on the D-pad as well as any of the rear buttons for 5 seconds. On the Xbox controllers, you will see this HYPR logo, which would be the Xbox button, get brighter. Then you're going to hold down what you want on the front of the controller, linked with whichever button on the back you want that paired or linked with. Hold it down for 5 seconds. That Xbox button is going to go back to a standard light, not super bright anymore, not getting button flashbanged. And after that, it's going to exit remapping mode. Repeat the process for the remaining 3 rear buttons. So 5 seconds to enter remapping mode, then 5 seconds of holding the pair of buttons I want paired, then repeat the process times 4. So a little bit of a lengthy process, but if you're somebody that's just going to set it once and forget it, not a huge deal. Now, I'm not going to waste too much of your time talking about the stock input lag or delay on this controller as well as the overclock performance, but I am going to run through my findings, and it's exactly what you probably would have expected if you watched any of my previous videos. The finding is around 8 milliseconds of input lag or delay when wired to the PC, and this controller is not susceptible to being overclocked as it is still polling rate locked as it is based on an Xbox controller. That's the PCB, that's the printed circuit board, that's what she starts life as. Stock Microsoft Xbox controller, HYPR gets their greasy hands on them. I don't know why they're greasy, maybe they just had lunch, there was a roach coach out front and everybody got a greasy meal. Came back to work, started working on the controller, forgot to wash their hands. So 8 milliseconds wired and around 16 milliseconds of input lag or delay when using the Xbox adapter for Windows PCs. Also, this is the first video that I'm officially going to announce this. I am going to be making an updated, revised 2.0 version of my overclocking guide because new software has came out, updates of the overclocking program that I've been using for ages. The methods and techniques really haven't changed, but I'm a little bit more slick talking now. Some of my lights are a little bit brighter and whatnot. The quality will be better in the second video, and I have more information to add to it. So there will be a comprehensive controller overclocking guide coming in the near future, because it has been about a year since the first iteration. Upgrades have been made to the content around here. Now on the HYPR website, we're no stranger to the layout if you've seen the DualSense review, but instead of us spending our time over here in PlayStation 4 and 5, we're focusing on the Xbox side of the house. Tournament, that's going to be your 2 rear button variants. Let's just skip right over that. Design your own, that's going to be the Builder, which we'll be touring in a second, but the Recon is the focus of this video. This controller is a good value at $190 with a 1-year warranty that does cover stick drift and the rear buttons, and does have 4 of the most comfortable rear buttons that I have tested to date on the Xbox. That includes Xbox One and Series generations. Interesting, so there's a $10 difference in the placement of the rear buttons. The 4 lowest, which is ring finger operation, that is the one that I chose, where you use a finger per rear button. That's a $200 controller. The 4 low is if you want to operate all 4 of the rear buttons with your middle fingers. That's a $190 controller. All the other specs are going to be the same. You come with a remap chip, which is fantastic. I do always recommend that you pop for that in case you get that one weird game where you want to do a different button binding, or definitely if you share the controller with somebody else. Quick triggers are awesome. It'd be cool if they were an on-off system, but the fact you have those mouse clicks is sick. Rumble's removed. It removes the vibration from the palms, save the weight and battery life of not having the full-size rumble force motors. I like that. Then you have the robust stealth rubber design. That's what they're calling their rubberized grips, which again don't feel the best on the hand, but better than hard plastic. And you got about a 7-day cooldown for them to process and build your controller, send it out. They do also have a payment plan over here. It looks like 4 interest-free installments for $17.15 a month. But what if you want to spec one out custom? What if you want to dive into their builder and tweak every single component? We can do that together. Mechanical rear buttons. Do we want 2? Nah, we like bigger numbers. 4 of them. And we're going to go 4 lowest, what the controller that we're testing today has. You do have a color choice for the rear buttons. I'm just going to go with, you know what? Screw it. We'll go with lime green. We're going to make this thing hideous. Remap chip, worth the $30. Please put it on there. Quick triggers, $20 out the door. Yes. Now as for your face plates, you do have your standardized option over here, or you can get solid colors for $13. These are a rubberized soft touch material. Feel very good on the hand. Then you have the sport grips, which only comes in black, and that is going to be the rubberized grips that I do recommend you get. Then they have removable over here for $20. I'm not sure if that actually means legitimately a magnetized removable faceplate. If so, I don't see a cutout for you to get your fingernail underneath there. So that might be kind of a B word to get on and off. Accent rings, that's your anti-friction rings around the thumbstick gates. Let's make them bright orange. Now for the left and right stick, you can choose concaved, domed, or interchangeable. I do strongly recommend interchangeable. Save a little money on KontrolFreeks because you have different heights that you can swap through. You have different colors, and that actually controls the bases, stems, and the caps all in one. All right, interchangeable sticks over there, make them orange. We're not really worried about color coding or anything like that. Your face or action buttons, you have the standardized, you have matte, which is going to be all one solid color. I mentioned earlier, I think that looks kind of tacky to me. Crystal looks a lot better in my opinion because you still have that factory OEM lettering. Looks really crisp. D-pad, you got the standard joint, but we're going to make it flat matte. You've got your accessory button suite over here. We're going to flatten matte those bad boys as well. Unfortunately, you don't have the actual graphic etched on there. They're just going to be all one color as we saw. Bumpers, hell yeah, we're going to be bumping people off with these lime green bumpers. Triggers, you're probably triggered. We're still working on the builder here. Let's make these blue. Side rails, competition's going to be getting railed out with this controller. As for the rear Tucus, we're going with Sakura Pink. Rumbles removed. Let's go ahead and leave them in there. I want to feel that rattle in my hand. And notice it's quoting a standardized 180-day warranty or 6-month, but I did mention specific components or parts that are covered for 1 year, that being the rear buttons and stick drift, two of the important ones there. Now, if you're in no rush, it will take about 4 to 5 weeks as of current. That is their lead time. This fluctuates constantly with these pro controller companies. Express build is a 5 to 7 day option, and it is additional $20, and it seems like they have to email you, look at their schedule, make sure that they have the availability to do that, and then you can get that going for you. Now, this has got to be the ugliest sack of meat I ever seen, but we spec'd out a controller together. And I will say that is actually a much lower number than I expected to see up here, considering I slathered on every single cosmetic option that I can find in the builder. And in most other builders on most other controller companies' websites, you're going to see a number starting with at least a 3, maybe even a 4 or a 5. I know this is dangerous territory where your wallet starts sweating, your wife starts threatening to leave you because you're spending damn near what you spent on a gaming console on a controller to control the sucker. All you really need to explain is that it's the most important part of gaming because it's the interface between you and the games you're playing. Nothing happens on screen without you diddling this controller. You want to diddle a controller that speaks to you as a gamer. That's what you tell your wife or girlfriend. Probably still won't work, but at least you tried. But I'm flabbergasted that their flagship, the most expensive I can get a controller racked up, is $238. The Recon is a much better value at $190 or $200, depending on the positioning of the rear buttons. And along those lines, that is the controller that I personally would recommend that you pick up if you are an Xbox player or you prefer the Xbox controllers on PC. Some of the things I do and do not like about HYPR's Xbox controllers, I do love the fact that they did extend the warranty from 6 months to a year for the stick drift. That's great. The stick drift. Sound like a boomer. Hey, you got the stick drift. I love the rear buttons. Like I mentioned earlier, it is probably the best rear button design I've used on Xbox to date. The Hex Gaming Advance, not the Ultra X, that one's kind of big and bulky, but the Ultra X, that one's kind of close to this, but not really. This is still better. And then the Elite Series 2, I've always been a fan of that rear paddle design. The Scuff Instinct Pro is actually pretty sick too, but this is better than all those. I really do like the rear button design on here. This was my initial review. I'm going to get a lot more stick time with this gamepad, and I'll follow up with you in a few months, letting you know, did the thing crumple to dust in my hand, or is it just the bee's knees and the mule's nips? HYPR is linked in the description below, alongside an exclusive discount for my audience, and I'll see you Stallions and Stallionettes tomorrow. Peace. If you enjoyed the video, liking it helps it to get seen by more gamers. This information will reach and assist them as well, which in turn helps me grow this little channel, which I do greatly appreciate. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover news in the gaming community and industry, tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, as well as honest gaming product reviews, keyboards, mice, headsets, controllers, mics, chairs, etc. There are some hefty exclusive discount codes found only in the description of my videos and only for the audience here at GamerHeaven. I have links to all my other platforms and socials in the description below. To get in touch with myself and the Stallions and Stallionettes of GamerHeaven, join the community Discord, and check me out at twitch.tv where I go live every other leap year on a blue moon if it falls into an odd calendar number, and my pH balance is on point. Just kidding, starting June I'm going to be live streaming a lot. Thanks for watching. This has been AK40 Kevin hosting GamerHeaven, and I'll see you tomorrow because I upload daily, all the time, 60% of the time, sometimes, most of the time. Peace.